Welcome to session 3 with Reggie McNeal. If you haven't got your $1,000 check in the mail, it probably means you're not the one who's getting it, just so you know. But we hope you enjoy.
It's up to 2,000 now. I mean, this is an unclaimed lottery. Have I mentioned lottery yet? Oh, all right, go.
That's part of the gospel, right?
Exactly right.
But we hope you enjoy these sessions. Continue to watch and make sure you're getting your assignments done and into me. And we'll keep building on what it means to build missional disciples. Go ahead, Reggie.
Justin is the proctor, and there are profound implications for that. And so you want to certainly get your assignments into him. Thank you so much, Justin.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you again. Now we've gotten that out of the way. Let's talk. Because in the last 2 sessions, it was about this whole larger context. Let me bring it down. The Missional Church, Big C, and I think there's, by the way, only institutional Christians could turn a discussion of church into Big C, Little C. There's only one church. And whether it's small c, big C, God doesn't look at anything but the church. And by the way, there are many life forms of church busting out besides just the congregational life form, because there are lots of people, increasing numbers of people, who are not susceptible to being congregationalized. And we have got to figure out how to be church where people already are, instead of inviting people to come apart from life to go through some certain activities and that kind of thing, which are great for those that fits their spiritual journey. But we're going to have to figure out a way to be church where people are already engage people in the rhythms of their life already. And so that's part of what it means to be a sent follower, a sent missional believer, a follower of Jesus, is always thinking of life as a mission trip and being sent. As the Father has sent me, so send I you. And so I want to talk about developing that kind of culture from the largest context possible of Missional Church. Let me kind of pull in the scope just a bit, and let's talk about the culture where you are. As a seminary student, many of you are going to be giving leadership to some kind of ministry, and whether it's in the context of a congregation, maybe it is congregational leadership, maybe it's as a small group leader, maybe it's as a spiritual leader in your home. Wherever church is working out for you, how do you create a people development culture around you? And so I'm going to let you make application, although I'll try to give some examples. Because if we are being people of blessing, if we are ourselves being developed into the person that God intended, which, by the way, makes you the mission. This is not a sidebar, this is really important. I mean, it's like we talk about the mission of God out there. It certainly is playing out in the world, but you know what? You're the mission too. You becoming who God saw you could be when He made you is mission enough for Him. So it ought to be. That's again why it ought to be critical to you. But we're going to be then creating a culture of blessing all around us. And there's some key architectural components, I think, to what creates a people development culture, and which, as you might recall, I use people development as my language for discipleship. Because, by the way, Jesus was discipling people before they were believers. We've made this spiritual journey some kind of linear, something like we're evangelized, and then once we get in, then we're discipled. This is craziness. It's about because God is trying to develop every person on the planet, and the mission incorporates every person on the planet. So how do you create this people? And there are 5 things I want to talk about in this session. Whether your people development culture is your home, your office, your congregation, your church small group, your missional community, however this works out. And the first word I've already been talking about is the idea of customization. In the Western culture, we have assumed that we could congregationalize people, put them on a 52-week, every 7 days, complete business cycle kind of experience, and if we could script everyone into that, just to get in that pipeline and participate in that somehow they would fall out the other end of this production as fully devoted something or other. Now, the truth is they're falling out, all right, but, falling off. But maybe not exactly fully devoted followers of Jesus or whatever, but we've got to be done with the notion that we can somehow just standardize everyone's spiritual journey. Now, usually if I'm in a room of folks, I'll ask, how many in here have more than one child? And a lot of people's hands go up, and I say, well, I don't have to make this point anymore, because we all know that our children grow exactly, those of us with more than one child know that our children grow exactly the same rate, exactly the same way, with the exact same interests, and they respond to the exact same thing. Are you kidding? I mean, every human being, brings such uniqueness. Well, then why in the world do we think that people follow some standardized approach to spiritual development or to people development, becoming who they are? I mean, it's craziness. But we've done it so long as a program in our churches, we think it's normal. And so customizing people's spiritual journeys mean, by the way, that if you're a small group leader, for instance, and you have a leadership responsibility, it means that no matter what it is you're studying or what it is that the group is consumed with, that every person in there is deserving of a conversation with you or someone to say, what is God up to in my life? Not just in the context of this group. What do I need God to do in the next 3 to 5 months of my life? How's that going? It is as simple as that, but it is as profound as that. Because what happens is, in our discipleship processes often, people are just processed through a curriculum, processed through a process, but no one's actually having these conversations about really what God is up to, what we hope God will do, how's that working, and helping to shape someone's life. I was with a spiritually attuned follower of Jesus recently who is not a church person. And for many people, you see, in the old world, we couldn't imagine such a thing. The world I grew up in, where church was the point, you couldn't be a follower of Jesus outside of, some kind of organized church. But once you understand church is organic, it allows for a much larger expression of what church is. And in this particular person's life, this person is a social worker in a county hospital, being a person of blessing, 50, 60 hours a week, dealing with the dark underbelly of our culture every single day. And she has recently created for herself, her own spiritual journey, a group of other social workers there who are followers of Jesus to convene on a weekly basis so that they can nurture one another, pray for one another, encourage one another. You see, she's living out her discipleship, her becoming a person. She's living that out primarily, like many people, like you who watch, in the workplace where most of our life is lived. And she's figured out, if she doesn't create an environment at her workplace that helps her become that follower of Jesus and stay on beam, on mission, that she'll slip. See, that's what I mean by customizing the journey. Because in the old days, we would tell her, what you really need to do is go to church on Sunday. That's going to meet your needs. She can't wait for some experience that takes an hour for her to passively engage in every 7 days in the kind of work that she's doing that requires so much effort and so much energy, in dealing with people's personal lives and pain and the struggle that she's facing. Now, you may be similarly positioned and wondering why that just following everybody else's prescription for your life is not working out. You've got to pay attention. We're going to talk about this later, to your own personality, your own vision, your own mission, your own strengths, your own talents, your own learnings. Every part of that is involved in shaping your spiritual journey. And by the way, it's way more fun this way anyway. But it requires that we take responsibility for our spiritual journeys. We don't just fall into what someone else has asked us to do. We have to customize that. Now, this also means a life or an architecture, a culture like this to support this is a life, an architecture that requires that we get really good at debriefing our life experiences. In the old days, discipling was about teaching people didactic, some kind of material from a teacher to a student, and then you go apply it and have fun, plug and play. When the truth is, people are rarely, I think, most people know we should love our neighbor. I mean, I rarely run into a person that says, I think that's crock, really. I mean, that love you, Jesus didn't mean it, or he was wrong. Not often do I run into it. So, but what we really need help with is making sense out of the ways that we're trying to bless people. So that when we bless people and they squander our blessings, when they squander God's blessings that come through us, how do we, and how do we need to keep putting ourselves out there? These kinds of questions are debriefing questions that help us make sense of the life that we're trying to live. And the truth is, we're all working off of a set of questions every day that we're trying to solve. And so a missional follower of Jesus is just being very intentional about teasing those out. Now let's just talk about home, for instance, as one of the cultures where maybe this people development thing is supposed to happen. And those of us who are parents of young children, you have that time with your kids right before bed or whatever else. Maybe it's the only time you've really had, it's kind of that precious moment when the rest of the day's been something else. Maybe you've been at work, or maybe they've been running around. Just learning to ask our children key questions. Hey, honey, what was the best part of your day today? What did you enjoy the most? Or maybe they're school-age kids, and we're wanting to find out what's going. Was there a time today that you ever felt unsafe? What was the biggest surprise today? Where did you see God today? You see, just teaching our own kids through this series of questions and debriefing really helps prepare them for a life of development. Because then that's something, and by the way, we roll that on into our adolescent years. I just chatted with the dad of a teenage daughter who just went to the prom this past week, and we discussed how to debrief that experience with her so that he would know exactly because things apparently didn't go exactly as planned. But it all turned out okay. But how to debrief that? Because you ask a teenager, how'd it go? Fine. End of discussion. Well, we've got to get a little more sophisticated at popping open the narratives with the questions that we ask. But it's true of you and me as well. I mean, if you and I have a set of questions that we routinely debrief our own lives with, where did we see God today? Where were we people a blessing today? What did we learn about ourselves today? It's interesting, I was talking with a woman who is part of a student ministry who has homeless. They serve the homeless as part of the routine of their student ministry, and she told me, I hate that. I hate that part of our work. Now, this is not the only person in the world, and maybe you, that has trouble with ministry, because as we popped that open, we understood that there's fear behind that hate. I mean, the reason she has such antipathy for it, she's afraid. Well, all of these myths of homeless people and stuff became then a part of our discussion. Crime and all these things. But what we really finally got down to was it is her fear of loss of control that was driving her nervousness about engaging with us, because she says, I'm afraid, I don't know what questions they're going to ask. I have no idea the life they live. I don't think I'm going to be up to what they ask for me. I'm afraid they're going to ask me for something I don't want to give them, and I won't know how to help them. You see, so ultimately, finally, we get down to the point that this act of service also became a way of helping her see something about herself. And those lessons about fear of a loss of control, the need to be an answer, all of those are lessons that she can carry into other arenas of her life where she's also living out that narrative and pulling back from situations where she's not in control, which means, by the way, that need to be in control. Have I mentioned she's a part of a student ministry? Then you probably suspect she has teenagers, and you might imagine that need as a parent to always be in control sets up some pretty interesting dynamics in the life. So you see, this is how we learn from one area of life and we transfer it to another area of life, but we don't get those learnings. We don't do that unless we have a routine way of debriefing. Now, some people journal, and this is their way of, they have this set of questions, and this is their way. Lord, what are you trying to teach me? And they work it out that way. Others of us, again, since I believe in standardization, I think each of you should journal, and if you are not journaling 3 hours a day, then you're not a very good disciple. And you probably have no intention of making your life count for anything. So everyone should journal 3 hours a day. I mean, are you kidding? You know I'm messing with you. I hope I'm messing with you. In fact, I don't journal. Or if you've ever bought one of my books, you've bought my journal. One of my life goals is not to have an unpublished thought. So your need to debrief may, though, be best carried out. My bride, for instance, of 31 years, she needs to talk it out with someone. She doesn't go into herself to find out herself. She goes into discussion with others because she's a highly external person. And so she doesn't know sometimes what she thinks until she hears herself say it. And that works out in relationship and discussions with others. So I don't know how it is, but you've got to figure it out. Also, I've already mentioned service, and so I'll go ahead and add it to our list of critical components for a life, a culture of people development. We all grow through serving others. It's that simple. We all know that. But what I'm fascinated is how many of our discipleship courses and processes don't involve service. In fact, if I were designing this course, and you will be glad to know that I didn't, it wouldn't be done with strictly an online component. If you listen to me for 12 hours or 6 hours, or it seemed like eternity, and fill out the stuff, you would have to have some expression of following Jesus out in serving someone. And so probably, having just said that, someone will put that in the course work. Your